This is Studio 809.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. I am your host, Hiking Bob Falcone, and you can find me on my website at hikingbob.com, which is links to my social media, my columns at the Colorado Springs Independent. They're still on hold, but you can still go back and read all the old ones. Also, the other podcasts we've done, my photography website. You can also sign up for my newsletter or just send me an email if you have a topic or a guest you'd like to hear on here. Send me a comment and let me know, and we'll do what we can to get them on or cover that topic. And if you'd also like to support this podcast, you can do that at Patreon, at patreon.com/hikingbob, where you can become a supporter and get rewards for different levels of support and things like that. We're also doing some Patreon member-only functions that you can participate in, but you have to be a Patreon member to do that. And you can do it for as little as $3 a month. So if you want to help support this podcast, you can do that at patreon.com/hikingbob. Today, my guest is Bill Beagle, who is the president of the Incline Friends, the friends group that is responsible, responsible, probably not the right word, helps support the Manitou Incline. Is that a better way to describe it, Bill?
That's an excellent way to describe it.
Great. So, Bill, I guess for people who may have heard about the Incline, here we just call it the Incline, but it's technically the Manitou Incline. Explain what that is, other than a real pain in the you-know-what to do.
The short story, of course, it's historical because it was at one time a short line cog railway up the flanks of Pikes Peak, just outside of Manitou Springs, to service a utility pump house, I believe. And when it served its purpose and was done, somebody turned it into a tourist attraction, ran little cable car or train up and down the side of it, and people would get nervous coming down because they could see just how steep it was coming down, and they would joke that, "Don't worry, folks, we have two springs to stop you at the bottom, Manitou Springs and Colorado Springs." And when that was abandoned, people just started hiking at some point. I moved here in 2003 and didn't probably start hiking until 2004. And just since that time, which is less than 20 years now, the popularity of it has grown. As you say, there are people outside of our area that may have heard about it or read about it, seen it online, seen videos. It has gained quite the reputation. And it serves as an iconic workout, a draw for people who want to challenge their physical abilities. And it's so gratifying, Bob, to read when people post things online of how proud they were to do it. And I say, if you can do it once all the way to the top, that's something to be proud of. And not only that, but what really makes me feel good is those comments usually include a gratitude for the locals who are so encouraging and supportive of our visitors, helping them out with safety tips, making sure they have enough water. That's really gratifying. There's a whole community that has grown up around the incline. I have a photo at home on my computer that somebody was getting married alongside of it one day.
Probably because they couldn't make it to the top.
They didn't get married. Try to climb with a wedding dress.
So describe you kind of mentioned it's steep. Describe how long it is and what kind of elevation gain there is with it.
Just under a mile, about 8/10. I guess it depends on what kind of measurement device you're using.
I've come out to about 9.9 tenths of a mile.
Yeah, and I think it's about 2,200 feet elevation gain, 2,768 steps to be exact, just like railroad ties. That's what they were in the past. When it was renovated because it was badly beaten up, they used just regular landscaping ties. And it is 68% grade at its steepest level. If you can even imagine that, you're almost falling over backwards. It's so steep. And I believe it's about 47% overall, something like that.
It's really steep.
It's really steep. And we have an Olympic training center in Colorado Springs. And when those athletes say it's tough, that speaks a lot.
And the Army Rangers from Fort Carson go there and train on it.
Yep.
And run up and down that thing. And so for a little more background for people who don't know, it was used, and for lack of a better word, illegally for many years. People would go up there and hike and climb up it. And to be honest with you, I was one of those people who did it. And it was, without stretching it, dangerous. A rock slide had taken out the railroad that was up there, so the tracks were gone. The ties that were up there were damaged and misaligned, and many were missing, and there were culverts that were open that if you stepped through one, tetanus was going to be your friend, you'd get cut up. So it was dangerous, and after many, and it belonged to, it crossed different political boundaries. Some of it was on Colorado Springs Utilities property. Some of it was in U.S. Forest Service property. Some of it was in Manitou Springs city property. Some of it was on El Paso County property. And after many years of wrangling and literally an act of Congress, it all got adopted into one piece of land, and has now become it's under the jurisdiction of Colorado Springs Parks Department, and they then spent, I forget how many millions, I want to say $4 or $5 million.
Somewhere around there, maybe even more.
Maybe even more.
Depends on who you talk to, I think.
They rebuilt it. They didn't make it any easier. They made it less dangerous. I'll give them that. I actually think in some parts it's actually tougher than it was before. But it's now a more, they rebuilt a lot of it. It was a big, big project over the course of several years.
3 phases.
Yeah, the 3 phases that were done to it, a lot of work that was done. So it's now a legit, you're not going to be arrested if you go up there anymore.
You call it dangerous. I think it's what made it exciting.
Yeah.
I would have described the stairs in those days as whopper-jawed. It looked like a beat-up piano with the keys all out of order, and it kind of made it more challenging. And we asked them not to sanitize it too much when they redid it. But, of course, to make it sustainable, you had to do that. You had to even out all the ties. And, in fact, about a year ago, in the spring of 2022, the guy who owns the company that did all the work up there hiked it with one of our parks rangers, and he was impressed with how their work had held up.
Yeah.
So putting the money into it and doing it right definitely paid off. The old drainage pipes that were rusted out that you referred to, they look like jaws waiting to take a bite out of your leg.
Yeah, if you slipped on one of those, you were in trouble.
They were broken and jagged, and there was rebar sticking up. There were hazards, there's no doubt. We say you could never make it safe. I don't like to ever use the word safe, but we made it safer to do, possibly.
You're not likely to, and this had happened before, people slipped and they actually got impaled. Their legs got impaled on a piece of rebar, which is obviously dirty and nasty, and dangerous is a word that some people may object to me using, but it is a very extreme. I don't even want to call it a hike. I don't think it's a hike, but it's a very extreme activity to do here. It is very steep. And the trick to it is, the deceiving part is 2 deceiving parts. You start out on a fairly moderate grade. So, this isn't too hard until it is. And then there's the false summit when you think you're near the top and you hit that and you realize, I got another quarter mile to go. and that is a really steep section that follows that. So it is deceiving. It is a feat to do, and there are people who do it very often. There are people like me I've done it a bunch of times, and I've pretty much had it. It's okay. It runs next to the bar trail, the historic trail to the summit of Pikes Peak, so there is a route back down, and if you don't want to do the incline, you could do bar trail, but here's the trick. The bar trail to the top of the incline is 3 miles. The incline is 1 mile. Now, of course, one's a lot easier than the other, so you kind of pick your poison there, which way you want to go.
We do discourage people from coming down because it is a little treacherous, challenging, maybe risky. Most of the regulars, a lot of the regulars, I should say, come down, and some do it very rapidly.
Down the incline itself.
They look like mountain goats. They're so sure-footed. Yeah. But I did it once all the way down. I didn't enjoy it. The bar trail is prettier. Yeah. And ultimately, we'll talk about this maybe later on, we want to still build that trail all the way from the top of the incline to connect with the Northern Return Trail, which was built about 2.5 years ago. Right. Intersects the incline at step 1300. So ultimately, we'd like to get away from the bar trail, reduce traffic on there also.
Right. Yeah, and I've done it going down the bar trail, down the incline. And like I tell people, there's a difference in your body. When you're going uphill, you're leaning into the hill, so your center of balance is more over, where it's not going to hurt you. When you're going down, your center of balance kind of tilts out. What I've told people is if you trip going down the incline, they're going to pick you up at the bottom. It is a long, tumbly way down there, and it's not against the rules to go down the incline, but it is highly discouraged to go down there, if I'm correct. And I definitely would not recommend people going down it. So let's talk a little bit more about this. You guys are big supporters of the incline. You guys have helped raise money and did a lot of work. Explain to us what else you've done there, what the Incline Friends have done to support the incline.
We do fairly frequent maintenance projects. Engineers will tell you it's always going to need some love because of the steepness and the fragility of all the soils in there. So we'll go out and replace ties, do something simple like pick up litter, which unfortunately is a never-ending job. and doing some trail maintenance on and around the incline. There's a connector trail that goes from the top of the incline down to the bar trail. We've done some work in there. Unfortunately, some people like to wander off trails, so we'll repair what used to be called social trails, but some of us think that sounds too nice. So they're unauthorized trails.
Rogue trails,
renegade trails, outlaw trails. We'll do some of that work. We do public outreach from time to time. Last fall, we had a little breakfast day there just as appreciation for the people who do the incline. Some of them have supported us financially. Some of them have supported us with sweat equity, working on projects. And we did a water bottle exchange. You probably, unfortunately, when you're hiking, you've seen those commercial bottles off the shelf that people just pitch in the weeds. We had bottles made with our logo on it and the 7 Leave No Trace principles from the Leave No Trace policy. Put those on the bottle, and we offered those to people if they walked up with their commercial bottle. Some people were pouring their Gatorade into these bottles. We gave them the bottles for free. They didn't cost Incline Friends much money at all. And we also put the City Parks logo on there. Colorado Springs Parks logo is on there. And we did about several hundred of those over the course of the summer. People were quite happy to have a brand new water bottle. Looked good. They were all cleansed before we handed them out. And little things like that, just public education. Sometimes it's so much fun just standing up there watching the people who come to do it. Around Christmas time, we've sold Christmas ornaments for a small donation. We'll give people a Christmas ornament with the Incline Friends logo on it. So we do a variety of things. We have something coming up that we'll talk about a little later on because it is legal now for 10 years, as you said. Nobody, to my knowledge, ever got arrested. That was obviously there for liability reasons. There was a no trespassing sign. None of the landowners wanted to be sued over it. So that's why that no trespassing sign was there. And it became legal officially in February of 2013. So 10 years now, and we're going to celebrate that in the month of May.
And the other part of making that legal was, of course, no money could be spent to improve it because nobody who was able to spend the money owned it, and it was owned by so many different property owners. So that also, not only did it make it legal, but now it allowed money to be spent to improve it and do things and stuff like that. So it's really a cool thing. Like I said, it's not my cup of tea, but I've done it plenty of times. If at my best, I did it in just under an hour. I think now, if I did it under a day,
props to you. Yeah.
you time me with a calendar, start on Monday,
pack a lunch,
and the calendar end on Tuesday by the time I get to the top. But it's pretty cool. So a lot of people who do the incline, like I just did. I said, well, I did it under an hour, a couple times, when I was younger. But there's a certain pride in doing it in a certain amount of time. There are also people who do it repeatedly, and they set, I don't want to call them official records, unofficial records for how many times they do it in a year. That's created a little bit of an issue with some people. You just kind of want to touch on all the record keeping that
Sure.
people are doing there.
It's worth talking about. It started late summer probably of 2022. Somebody determined that somebody was filing false ascents that they had done, uploading data that didn't really exist, and that just mushroomed from there into who had done the incline, how many times. There's a 500 club, there's a 1,000 club for doing it within 365 days, not a calendar year. And it, for me, in my perspective, my opinion, it looked like a playground squabble that devolved into something very vicious and nasty.
Right.
And it just kind of cast a pall over the whole community entirely because it's always been a fun, tight-knit community. A lot of joking going on. You did this many, I'm going to top that. It would go back and forth. Some people made T-shirts for each other and little plaques. It was a very friendly thing. And then unfortunately, as I said, it looked like a playground squabble gone bad, and it just got out of control. And eventually, it surprised me it took the media as long to get onto the story as it did, but once it did go viral in public, and part due thanks to social media, it just spread. And it's kind of a black eye on the whole thing. And we're certainly hoping to move past that. There are a lot of people that want it to just go back to being fun again and have people quit arguing.
Yeah, and we were talking before we recorded this, and I've mentioned this before. I post all my hikes on my social media page, but it's never about I did this and I'm the best at anything. I recognize that while I might do 800 or so miles a year, there may be people who do 500 a year. That's good. There may be people who do 1,000 miles a year. That's even better. It's not a competition, so it's kind of disappointing that it's devolved into a competition. And now if somebody's cheating on it, they have to live with their own conscience. And there's no what bothers me about this is, why would you cheat on it? There's no money in it. Nobody gets paid for how many they do. There's no prize. It's not a contest. It's almost to the point, like, I want to say, does anybody really care other than the people who are doing it? If it's a friendly competition, that's good. I did 800 miles a year. I want you to do 850 so you can do more miles. That's a good competition.
Sure.
I want you to beat me, because then when you do 850, I need to do 900 next year or something like that. When it devolved into, and we're kind of talking around this, there's been a number of articles in the Gazette. We did a really good job of covering this. I did not cover it. Mostly because it just wasn't something I wanted to touch on. But the articles that were covered, I thought did a pretty fair job of describing it. To me, and I'm just speaking for myself now, there was a level of silliness there that I thought was just a little ridiculous. It's like we stopped acting like grown-ups and started acting like children for something that, it's not the Guinness Book of Records. They're not tracking this.
Right.
Nobody really cares. And if somebody's lying about it, people will figure that out. And
It's great that people set personal goals.
Yeah.
Some people want to lose weight. Some people want to do so many miles. And when you achieve those goals, you should be recognized and given your
Sure.
props and feel proud of what you did.
Yeah.
But beyond that, as you said, there's nobody keeping track of these records at
Right.
all. And I want to make it clear also that Incline Friends, as a nonprofit organization dedicated to maintaining and sustaining the incline, it's not in our mission anywhere to arbitrate disputes among people. And in this case, it was apparently very few people that got into disruptions with each other. And as I said, you said children, and it did look like a playground kind of argument to begin with.
Yeah. We're talking about a very small, I make it very clear, a very small subset of people who do the incline out of the hundreds of thousands of people, I guess, every year, visitors and locals and people training at the Olympic Training Center or Fort Carson who do it. We're talking about a very tiny, tiny, tiny subset of people. So if you've read those articles and you're worried about the attitude, just go and do it anyway. You're going to be just fine. And you know what? If it takes you 3 hours to do it, hey, finishing that thing is a lot of work.
Exactly.
And it is an accomplishment.
As we said early on, if you can do it once, it's something to be proud of.
Right.
You read comments from people that made it as far as the bailout at 1,300 steps, and they feel great about that. So it's just good to encourage people in any of their pursuits going up there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Bill, let's move on to some other stuff. What else you got going on over there at the Incline?
The celebration of the 10 years Incline legal will be May 11th. That's a Thursday at the UCCS Event Center, Center for Entertainment, for the Arts, I believe it's called, on the University of Colorado Springs campus. We're going to recognize, I think, just the accomplishments that people do. It's a way to celebrate. Again, if you've gone up it once or 1,000 times, we want to celebrate you. And we want to talk about some of the things we've accomplished over the years. Incline Friends was founded in 2011, the same year that the master plan was put together for the Incline. Master plan, whether it's done for a park or a trail, lays out how the trail is to be taken care of and what's to be provided to the public and to the trail and open space itself. So the highlight of that evening also is going to be a movie that we're going to show. We used to do this years ago when we were trying to raise funds. We rented out places and showed movies of spectacular feats. You talk about crazy things people do, or I should say inspiring things people do.
Crazy is not a bad word.
In the summer of 2021, a young man, I think he's in his early 30s, Timothy Olson, who used to live in Boulder, Colorado, now resides in Oregon. He decided he wanted to try, not that week, not that year, but he trained for this, obviously, and 2021 was his year to do it. Set a record, or fastest known time, they call them, FKTs, because there is no monitoring agency necessarily. It's all measured with your GPS data or whatever. Just like the Incline, you can store, record information. And the Pacific Crest Trail runs from Mexico to Canada, 2,600 miles, something roughly like that, which means you had to run, to break the fastest known time, he had to complete it in about 51 days, which means you're running at least 50 miles, and usually more, every day for 51 days. Now imagine that. I mean, it's one thing for somebody to train for a marathon. And he did it.
That's beast mode.
Yes, he beat it by about 11 hours. I think the movie's going to be great. I haven't seen it. It's going to be very entertaining because there were so many elements involved. When he got to the Pacific Northwest, there were wildfires up in that area. Had to take some detours, plus you're breathing smoky air. His wife and her parents were his support team, along with Jason Coop, who coached him. Jason's been on their incline board since the beginning in 2011. Jason was his coach through Carmichael Training Systems, and Tim did it. And he's going to be here, I believe, to answer questions after the movie. And I'm sure everybody wants to know, why did you do this? How did you do it? Where did you find...
Because he could.
Yes. Where did you find the fortitude to do all that? Also, during that evening, before the movie, we're going to recognize 3 outstanding young people. This is an idea that came up after the Incline was renovated. Incline Friends board looked around the table and said, what do we do now? And somebody said, what if we had a scholarship program? Well, it didn't get any traction back then, but the thought was resurrected in 2022, and we put together a program. We had a criteria where students in the Pikes Peak region, you didn't have to live here, but you had to go to high school somewhere in the Pikes Peak region, and it was for seniors only that were heading off to college. And let me just back up and say the reason we did this, in part, is some of us aren't getting any younger. Maybe you are, Bob, because you hike so much, but
No.
I'm not. And we want to ensure that and encourage young people to be the future stewards that are going to take care of these resources like the Incline. So that was a big part of the criteria. We wanted to see young people that were involved. And the one that came out on top, we'll get to her in just a minute. We had 15 applicants overall. 5 we eliminated right away because they missed the part about being involved in the outdoors in some respect. They didn't have that. We cut it to 10 people, and from that we came down to a group of 4. 6 board members reviewed those applications, and we got 2 volunteers from the educational community, a teacher from the Harrison School District and a counselor from the Manitou School District. They reviewed the applications, and from those 8 people, we had a rough point system, and we ended up awarding 3 scholarships. We were going to do 2, but these kids were so outstanding, Bob. The first one, Adele, a senior at Palmer High School in the Springs, had worked with RMFI, the Rocky Mountain Field Institute. And of course, let me just say, all these kids, of course, had grade point averages above 4, because you can do that these days.
Yeah.
I struggled for an A, and they're getting 4.7s and 4.5s.
I was a solid 3.
I will not reveal my transcript. And the second point getter, Liana, from Fountain Fort Carson High School, she had worked with the Rocky Mountain Youth Corps. And our third recipient, a young man named Taka from Palmer High School, he has gone out and done things like help pick up litter in Monument Valley Park. He's headed for Brown University. Liana is going to go to the University of Colorado at Boulder, and Adele is going to go to the University of Michigan. The other criteria we had, we wanted a transcript from them to see their grades, of course. We asked them for 2 letters of recommendation, and boy, some of those letters, I was impressed with the time the teachers and counselors took to write these letters, because they were lengthy and full of superlatives for these young people.
Great.
We asked them to write an essay, and we also had a questionnaire that they filled out. We had an application form where they told us what their goals were. A couple of them, I think the young ladies want to go into environmental engineering. So those are the kind of people we were looking for, and that's the reason behind the scholarships. And we're just delighted. We're giving $2,500 to each of those young people. And while that's not a lot in this day and age, we feel, it was pretty generous of Incline Friends to do that. We're pretty excited to be doing this, and we'll see where it goes. If it becomes an annual thing, we'll probably tweak the program maybe a little bit. But for our first time out of the chute, we thought we designed a pretty good criteria. We sent the criteria out to 15 school districts throughout El Paso County. So a lot of people had a shot at it, and we're pretty happy the way it turned out.
Way cool. It sounds like a great program. It's not, no, I shouldn't say not normal. It's not the usual that a nonprofit friends group can actually have the resources to do a scholarship thing like this. So it's way cool that you guys have the resources to be able to do that. And $2,500, he said, not a lot, doesn't sound like a lot of money, but that's can be the difference between a student living a little comfortably and maybe not, for lack of a better way to describe it. So it's significant. There's no doubt it's significant. I think it's really neat that you guys were able to do this.
As we were designing the program, of course, we talked about how much should we offer. The first figure that came out was $1,000. Then we all looked around at each other and said, that'll buy books for 1 year.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. So that's Thursday, May 11th. We're going to introduce those young people to our audience and show the movie. And you can get tickets online by going to the Ent Center for the Arts at UCCS online. And there'll be, on their events calendar, there'll be a link to how to buy tickets. They're $10 for the movie. Not a bad price.
No.
You have to bring your own popcorn, though. That's all.
Oh, well, we'll probably can make that happen. Yeah. I did enter that in my calendar while you were talking about it. I'm like furiously put it in my calendar. And today I had nothing planned, so I should be able to be there.
Good.
Way cool. I think that's a great thing. I think that the work besides the work you guys do anyway, but I think that being able to offer a scholarship is, like I said, not the norm for nonprofits and friends groups. They typically just don't have the resources. The fact that you guys do, speaks of how successful, your group is, and then to be able to share that outside of your group, to be able to share that with students, I think it's a wonderful thing. So I hope that this becomes a yearly thing for you guys. And I hope I'm not putting pressure on you and your board.
No, I think it could be. I think if you asked every board member, they'd, and we have a really solid board. We have about 10 members now, 9 or 10. They come and go. And as I said, it's the 11th year, and Jason Coop and I are originals, so we're getting along in the tooth, to say the least. But every board member, I think, would like to see this be an annual thing, whether it stays 3 or just 2, or we left ourselves enough latitude in the instructions that we don't have to give any. If we didn't get any qualified candidates, or if we just had one, we might just give one. But boy, it speaks well of the young people out there and also our board that there was very little discussion about, should we do a third? Yes, let's do a third.
Good.
That was very gratifying.
Way cool. I think it's great. Are you guys going to do any other events around the 10-year anniversary, or is that pretty much your main event there?
That's pretty much it, although we have one board member who lives near the Incline. He's very generous with his time, and he likes to do fun things. Last year, I think he whipped up about 5 gallons of lemonade, and I think probably because you were in firefighting, you know what a gallon of water weighs. What is it, 7 pounds or something
more like around 9.
9 pounds.
Yeah.
So 5 gallons of lemonade and in a tank, and I think he had a couple of friends help, but he carted it. You should say it's hard enough just climbing this thing without carrying stuff. And he'll do cookouts or things like that. Just, again, there's a whole community that grew up around the Incline, and it can be really festive. And who isn't thirsty after climbing 2,768 stairs? So we do little things like that from time to time. I think public outreach, not only is it fun for me, but it's essential, especially with people coming from out of state, to educate them for their own safety and the leave no trace principles. A lot of people aren't even familiar with what that entails.
And that's very important up there. You talked about, lugging stuff up there. I was one of the first people to do a hike after 9/11 up there with their firefighting gear on. And we had stripped down the gear to make it light, and it was still a bear of a thing to do. And that has since, it took a break for a while there for COVID, but that's since come back with other firefighters doing it. But that gives you an idea too. If he's lugging a 5-gallon container of lemonade, which may weigh more than just pure water because of whatever else goes in the lemonade, that is a bunch of weight.
He's a younger man.
Yeah,
he can do it.
He's younger and stronger than me, that's for sure. And it is a bear of a thing. My trick was I would hike up there, hike back down, then I'd go to the keg in town there and have a nice big buffalo burger.
Yeah. And probably still didn't get all the calories.
Oh
back.
no, not even close. So it's a really cool thing to do. Traffic became an issue when the Incline became legal. When it wasn't legal, there were places to park, and not everybody knew about it. Not everybody knew how to get there. Became an issue when it became legal, because it's on the end of a narrow residential road. It's across the street from where the cog railway goes up to Pikes Peak, which has its own traffic issues there. Tell people how is the best way for them to get to the Incline. And the first thing I would tell people is you can't just drive up there.
No, I recommend parking at Hiawatha Garden. It's convenient. If you want a little extra workout, it's only a mile up to the cog, and those of us who might be training for the Pikes Peak Ascent or something, it's just another mile to go, and you get to go through town and come back through town. Plus, the shuttle bus runs out of there if you want to take the bus from Hiawatha Gardens, and it'll run back down too. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, and when you come down from the Incline, even if you ran up to the Incline, you don't feel like running back down, you can take the bus back down. No one really should have been surprised at the increase in the number of people doing the incline, because the master plan includes a study that was done where they put a counter out there, and they estimated anywhere between 2,500. They put a counter out for 2 weeks, and they extrapolated that data. 250,000 and 500,000 possibly a year. Mm-hmm. Now that's generally run a little over 200,000, maybe between 2 and 300,000. I don't know if it's ever hit 300,000 even. And as you say, the geography up there, with an attraction like the Cog Railroad and a box canyon where there's no outlet, narrow streets. So it's much more advisable to, take one of those ride-sharing services or just park at Hiawatha Gardens. Manitou has put up some great signage telling you how many spaces are available in their lots, their pay lots. Their pay system seems to be pretty easy to use. You plug in your license plate number, and when it works properly, you can add time. If you're having lunch and you don't want to rush back and
you get a message on your phone
meter, so to speak, you can just add there. So that's probably the best thing to do. And watch, if you can do it on weekdays, it's probably not going to be as crowded as Saturday and Sunday. And watch for special events. Manitou has a lot of things going on. It's a fun town. They have a Mardi Gras parade. They have, I think, a coffin race, and they have art show around Labor Day. So just pay attention to what's going on there, too. Save yourself some traffic.
And the reason why I mention that, not only will you be just wasting your time trying to drive up there and find a place to park, the residents up there, and I complained a bit, and I think they had, I know they had a very legitimate complaint about traffic and noise, especially people in the summer trying to beat the heat. We get out there very early, car doors slamming, people not really recognizing it's a little early and it's a Saturday, people probably trying to sleep in. So, be nice to the neighbors who live there, and most of whom I think support the incline being there. But if you want to keep their support, try not to be disruptive to them and do the right thing. Park in town, get the shuttle bus up there. If you take an Uber ride up there, then you can take that and have it drop you off and pick you up later. But yeah, I just, I'm bringing that up just to encourage people just to be good, responsible users. And imagine if this was your neighborhood this thing was in. And remember, most of those people, too, have lived there since before it was legal. So they, you can't say that they live near an attraction. It wasn't an attraction when a lot of those people moved there. I know a lot of the people have lived there for a very long time, or their families have. So just be a good, considerate user and just take the shuttle or get dropped off. But don't drive up there looking for a place to park. It's just not the thing to do.
I watched a fellow one morning. We were up there to do some work in the area on the trails, and I watched a fellow circle the bar trailhead parking lot like a shark. He must have gone around I don't know how many times. Instead of just, by the time he wasted, he could have taken the bus up there and been there.
Right.
But I don't know. People are funny.
Yeah.
They tend to follow their habits.
Yeah, and that's okay. They get disappointed. Maybe they'll go on and move on to something else. What else is the Incline Friends got going on?
Well, we're still pursuing that trail from the top of the incline to the north. We built the other Northern Return Trail 2.5 years ago. It goes from step 1300 back down to the bottom. It's a beautiful scenic trail. This trail would start from the top of the incline and hook up with that, coming down again to take pressure off the bar trail is the major reason for doing that. And that top part of the incline and the area around it is owned by the U.S. Forest Service, as you mentioned. So we're having to work with them, the city of Colorado Springs. I get out of their way and let the Parks Department work with the Forest Service, and they have to get everything planned out. We've had a rough trail drawn up, a draft proposal. That's being tweaked right now by Parks Department, and they'll present it to the Forest Service. And eventually, down the line, they'll have to do a National Environmental Policy Act study, NEPA study. That could take months, and Incline Friends is interested in contributing to the cost of that because, believe it or not, that can run six figures for a study like that. And then, of course, there would be the construction cost. That's very rugged terrain, as you know, and those who have never seen it, trust us, that's a very rugged bouldering and a lot of scrub oak, a lot of trees. We don't like to take down trees if we don't have to. So there are experienced trail designers that will take care of handle that part. So who knows? We could be at least a couple of years away from seeing that come to fruition. And our other priority has always been in the master plan. It calls for permanent restrooms at the bottom. We'd like to get rid of the unsightly porta-johns and have a building with permanent restrooms in it for the public to use, and maybe to store some memorabilia and things like that.
Cool. And let's just touch briefly. We mentioned the bailout. We mentioned Northern Return. Explain kind of what those points are along the incline?
Well, first of all, if you really feel fatigued and you realize you've bitten off more than you can chew, or if you want to just get a taste of it, a very small taste, there is a place to get off around step 395. So you can walk less than 400 steps, and as you say, you get your heart rate up pretty quickly, and you can get off there, and it just goes over to the Ute Trail, which parallels part of the incline, and take the Ute Trail back down to the base of the incline. And then at step 1300, that's the northern return trail. You get off there and it takes you to the north, and again it hooks up with the Ute Trail and brings you back down right where the incline starts. The traditional bailout that was there a long time ago is around step 1800, somewhere in there, 1798, somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. Don't hold me to that. And that goes to the left and hooks up, goes to the south, hooks right up with the bar trail. It is right off the bar trail. And I think we're going to be installing a sign there because sometimes people coming up the bar trail get a little confused. They see this little trail going over to the incline. So we're going to put some additional signage in there. It's another thing Incline Friends is working on, just so people don't get confused. Where the connector trail from the top of the incline, if you're still following along, goes to the south and connects up with the bar trail, interestingly enough, some people would get to the bottom of that connector trail, and the way it dumps you out onto the bar trail dumps you out facing west, and people would just start walking that way away from the base of the incline.
They're actually going up to the top.
Actually
of Pikes
going
Peak.
up, and people say, I've had people say, I can't believe somebody would do that, walk uphill. I said, well, they just face this way coming down the connector trail, and they just keep going straight ahead.
Right.
They're probably fatigued. So a sign went in there about 2 years ago, directing people back down to the base so they don't get too confused there. There's always work to be done.
Yeah. And I know that place you're talking about, at that point, it's not exactly an uphill section. It's kind of a flat section of bar trail. So I can see the person who's not here often or hasn't been here before kind of getting turned around in that kind of stuff. So it's good that, you guys are helping with that.
We're always observant for projects to be done, and we're open to suggestions if anybody has some. We've put 2 more benches in near the base of the incline. An Eagle Scout came to us a couple of years ago, and he got passed on to us by the Parks Department. He wanted to do a project. Well, he said, well, we could use a bench there. And Incline Friends paid for the materials. His dad paid for the concrete. And it was a great project for the young man to get his Eagle Award.
Cool.
And then we decided, well, we could use a couple more there. City Parks did a wonderful job building a retaining wall to hold the hillside back so it doesn't slough down. And we got those 2 benches last fall, put them in this past February. And didn't take long with a half dozen volunteers or so. You'd be surprised the work they can get done. That soil's not easy to dig in, as you know.
Very rocky.
Sometimes. So we paid for those 2 benches, and they went in there. And so we're always looking for stuff like that. Another Eagle Scout project that was done several years ago, young man we decided, talking with him, that he could put number signs on the stairs. And I told him, why don't you just do every 100 so you're not doing 2,768 little signs. Yeah, I think his dad helped him get them cut out of metal, and it took him a few weekends, and he and his buddies got that done. So you can mark your progress as you're going up. So you can say, well, I only have 2,600 to go.
The northern return trail I thought was a great idea, and you were able to get around dealing with the Forest Service because that was on Colorado Springs Utilities property.
Right.
So we already had a connection to that. And it hooks up to the Ute Pass Trail, which is a trail that was built rebuilt when I was on the County Parks Advisory Board. And that's been a trail that's another one that was there for many years, wasn't actually official, followed the old road, which followed an old Indian trail. So for people who may want to do this, if you want to make a day of it and you don't really want to do all the way up to the top of the incline, or maybe you just get up there like I would do at however many 1,300 steps and go, I've lost my complete mind here. If you get off there and go down to the Ute Pass Trail, instead of turning right, going back to the start, if you go left and follow the Ute Pass Trail, it's several miles, but it's a fairly easy trail. You really get to experience a whole nother thing out there that a lot of people don't get to see, because it's just like doing the incline. To do the Ute Pass Trail, you've got to get a shuttle or something, because they basically start right next to each other. Ute Pass Trail's a right, incline's a left. But it's a kind of a cool trail to do. It's a lot of fun. It's very scenic. And if you want an adventure, do Rattlesnake Gulch on the way back and deal with that on the way back. And you'll still end up in the same place. So everything, what's nice about this too, is everything ends up in the same place. The bar trail is just around the corner, and then the Ute Pass Trail and the incline are right next to each other. Everything is kind of localized, which I think probably happened a bit by accident, but it's good that it worked out that way.
Yeah, who knew that an old rail line was going to become an attraction?
Yeah. Except for some crazy person who someday decided to climb and go, hey, this is kind of fun. Beats me. What else you guys got going on? You got a lot of great stuff. You guys are really doing some really good work up there.
Yeah, I think so. It's as I said, we're always open to suggestions that people have. And,
I have too. An escalator up and a zip line down.
Yeah, the zip line would be interesting.
I'm not the first person to suggest either one of those things.
Yeah, we try to strike a balance of improving it without making it look too touristy.
Yeah, and for people who haven't done it, I know we're making it sound like it's a really tough thing. It is. We're not going to sugarcoat this. It's tough. The views from up there are tremendous. The picture you want to get, everybody gets is a selfie, or if you're up there with a group, take turns taking pictures of you at the top of the incline with the steps going down, and it looks like going straight down, and then behind it is Manitou Springs, and then behind that is Colorado Springs. If you get the angle right, you can get a little piece of the Guard of the Gods in the picture. It is definitely the picture to get. And we have some photographers every year who submit pictures to the Colorado Springs Parks Department calendar contest of some really great photography that is done up there. My friend Rob Lucas does a lot of pictures up there. He gets some really great pictures of the incline. So it's a beautiful place to do. And then coming down Bar Trail, the historic Bar Trail, and it's certainly, I recommend it. Then going down the incline, definitely do not recommend that. But it's a pretty cool spot. And it is an accomplishment. If you can climb that very steep terrain for a mile, you're doing something.
Yep. There are people that have T-shirts made and things like that. We do that from time to time at Incline Friends too. In addition to handing out water bottles, it might be a shirt or something if you're up there. So
cool. Anything else you got going on there? Do you want to talk to us about?
Nope. Just Thursday, May 11th. Doors at 6, and the program starts at 7. The movie will start around 7:30. It's about an hour long, and then we left a half hour for questions of Timothy Olson, the man who accomplished that incredible feat of going the Pacific Crest Trail in just 51 days. And carve out 6 to 9 p.m. on that Thursday, May 11th. Come join us at the Ent Center at UCCS.
Awesome. Well, Bill, thanks again for being on here. We haven't had you on here in a while, but it's good to have you on here. Bill and I talk a lot, but we don't get him on the podcast very much. Probably a reason for that.
Yeah, it'd be a long podcast.
A long podcast, and probably not all entirely for public consumption. But Bill, glad to have you back on here again. And again, appreciate all the work you guys do. And I'm looking forward to this event. It's in my calendar. I got nothing else that day.
Good.
Nothing else is going to go on that night, so right. I'll be there. So,
always a pleasure.
Thanks again, Bill. And thanks everybody for listening to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast.
Before you go, did you know you can rate and review our Studio 809 podcasts? That will help us because our egos really need to have thousands and thousands of listeners. But that helps our wonderful sponsors reach more ears too. And we do love our sponsors. So just go to Studio 809 or any individual 809 podcast in your iTunes or podcast app and click on ratings and reviews. Thanks.